So, today I am here to do the second part of my January wrap-up. It's not been a bad reading month actually, it's been surprisingly good. At the start of the month, I will link my wrap-up for that down below. I read a lot of audiobooks which sort of helped me get up in the first part of the month, and then the second part of the month I've actually managed to read quite a lot. So I will get straight into my reviews of these. So the first one, I don't have it here because I borrowed it off my boyfriend, and it is We by, and I'm going to butcher this name, I've got it written down, Yevgeny Zamyatin, I think, and the translation was by Clarence Brown. Now, for those of you who don't know, We is like I don't know if it's the original dystopian, but it was the inspiration for 1984, so a lot of people think that 1984 sort of started that kind of novel, but We was actually out before then. It's by a Russian author, and I believe it was banned in Russia for quite a long time, which is why 1984 is sort of considered as the forerunner. But actually, I have to say, having read this, 1984 is blatant copyright, like the story is identical, but I would say that I actually enjoyed We a lot more. Now 1984 I read a very long time ago. I would like to reread it just to see what I think of it now, but at the time I wasn't overly blown away by it. It's very highly political, which is fine and interesting. Especially in a dystopian, it's interesting to look at the political implications. However, I felt like the writing wasn't quite on point for me. However, in We, the writing is absolutely beautiful. It's so poetical, so deep and meaningful, and also what I found in We is that of plot focused more on the personal aspect rather than the world and the politics of the world. So the world was just there, and it wasn't all about the world, it was more about the characters within that world, which is definitely something I prefer. So We is basically about a world where everybody is considered as one whole thing, so it's we, so there's no I, there's no you, it's all we, so everything you do is for the greater good, and people are literally all their freedoms taken away. Everybody has to work really hard. You only get so many hours of spare time each day, and everything you do is very highly monitored. And the man, I can't remember his name, it was a while ago and I haven't got it with me, the main character ends up meeting a woman who she goes against the norm, and he's never met somebody like this before, and she kind of encourages him to break the rules. And at first this is completely alien to him, he doesn't understand, and he wants to go straight to the authorities and report her, but for some reason he doesn't do that. And the more he gets to know her, the more he sort of realises that maybe the way that things are run is not necessarily how they should be. It's really good, I really enjoyed it. It sort of looks at the idea as he starts to realise that there's this other world that he hasn't been thinking about, and that he hasn't been sort of critically analysing the way that everything is. He starts to think that he's ill, and the doctors sort of diagnose him with an illness, and they say that his soul is coming back, and that is an illness and it needs treating. It also looks at the fact that their creativity has been taken away. There's a very interesting bit in there where it looks at the fact like the city is in walls, so nobody ventures outside the walls and nobody wants to. But he realises that the wall is sort of, they're told that the wall was put there to keep them together and to hold them up, but actually he realises that maybe it's the wall that's the problem, and things like that. And it's really interesting. I would definitely recommend this if you like 1984, give it a go. Then I read Cinder by Marissa Meyer. This was my first in my YA quest. I'm now going to be reading a YA book every month to try and get the YA books on my shelves down. I'm sure everyone knows about this by now. It is a retelling of Cinderella, but Cinderella is a cyborg, and it's kind of a dystopian-y world. It was okay, it's not my kind of thing, and the romance in here was really underdeveloped and bad, but I kind of expect that of YA, sadly. But it was enjoyable, and I did like the storyline. It kind of ended on a cliffhanger, which is annoying because I wasn't thinking that I was going to carry on with the series after this one. I thought, I'm happy to have read this, I probably won't be carrying on. Nothing is really resolved in this book, which surprises me because I know that the other two in the series are based on different main characters and different fairy tales, but I assume that the people in this one are going to be in the future ones. So that's irritating. What I might do is get the others on audiobook, if anything, and just listen to them. I certainly won't be picking them up, but it was okay, and I think if you like this kind of thing, you'll enjoy it. It's, you know, typical storyline of Cinderella, but as I say, Cinderella's a cyborg, and she actually meets the prince at the very beginning, and she doesn't know that she's a cyborg, and they sort of have an instant connection, but she's got this deep dark secret. There's also a plague going through their world, which Cinderella seems to be immune from, and we sort of find out why, and that's quite interesting, and I liked that aspect a lot more. I almost felt like this Cinderella aspect didn't need to be in there. Like, it would have stood alone as a novel in its own right, the aspect of the plague and everything like that. And as I say, it was the romance that really irritated me. It was sort of your typical they see each other and they fall in love kind of thing, which is kind of frustrating. But anyway, yeah, it was okay, and I'm glad I read it, and now I can get rid of it. Then I read Kate Atkinson's Life After Life. I've done a separate review of this, which I will link down below. Really, really good. I won't go into this in too much detail, other than to say that everyone should read it. It's a fantastic book. It's basically about the idea of fate. It looks at the life of a woman, and we sort of follow her down different paths of her life. So we follow her down one path and she'll die. Then we'll start again and she'll go down a different path. And that carries on going. We get to sort of pivotal moments in her life, and then we go at crossroads to each one. So we see all the different sort of variations of her life that she has. It's really interesting. It's hard to describe, but it's a fantastic read, and it sort of looks at the idea of fate and how much of a part in our lives fate has, I suppose, but I would definitely recommend. Finally, my reread for the month was Ken Kesey's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This is actually the book that prompted my quest to reread, because I read this when I was about 15, and I was at a place where I wasn't really interested in reading at that time, and it's not the thinnest book, although this time I read it really quickly. But before, when I read it, I think it took me about a month to get through, and when I read books slowly, I just don't enjoy them. So I could feel that it was a book that I would love, but I didn't love it at the time I read it. However, on this reread, I absolutely loved it. As I say, I whizzed through it. It was fantastic. For those of you who don't know, this is about life on a mental ward, viewed through the eyes of Chief, who is one of the inmates. He's considered to be deaf, but he isn't. He just sort of doesn't bother to speak to anyone because he doesn't feel like anyone wants to hear what he has to say. And a inmate from prison has been transferred to the mental ward called McMurphy, and he sort of shakes things up on the ward. There's one nurse there called Miss Ratched who is really unpleasant, and she sort of plays mind games with these men. And it basically looks at the idea. It's a heartbreaking read, but it's also kind of positive in a way, because it looks at the idea of the fact that you have to fight authority figures and things that you don't believe in, and that it might not end well, and you might not reap the benefits of it, but you have to do it anyway, because it's the influence that you have on people around you that matters the most. What I found interesting, I have read the film since reading this the first time, and in the film, it was a while ago since I've seen it, but I'm pretty sure that we get rid of the narration from Chief, so we don't have him viewing McMurphy, but we just have, obviously, a general look. What I found interesting about the book is the way that Chief views McMurphy, and it really shows you the influence that this full of life man is having on these people who have completely given up all hope. It's a really inspiring story. As I say, it's very, very sad at the same time, but ultimately it is inspiring. I will warn you, there is quite a lot of racist language in here, and it was uncomfortable at times, like it does get quite extreme. But I think, and I know it's not an excuse, but I think it's important to state that it was written at a time when the terms that are used in here weren't necessarily considered as offensive as they are now. They were sort of used in general conversation. So I kind of do forgive older books for using language that we wouldn't dream of using today. But if racist language is something that really offends you, then I probably wouldn't read this. But otherwise, I urge you to pick it up. It's fantastic. So that's all I read in the second half of January. Let me know down below how your reading's been going, and I will see you next time. Bye!